Thanks, Ian. Can I begin by acknowledging country and pay my respects to elders both past and present? Power and Peril in the Digital Age. It's such an apt title for this forum. I can't think of anything more important in terms of what we're discussing. COVID's dominating the world in the last 18 months, but it really is how we frame the future in this decade, particularly in the digital space, by making sure it is human-centric before it runs away from us, is so critical. Because if it does run away from us, then it will put strains on the things that are precious to us, such as democracy, such as our freedoms contained in democracy, around privacy, around security. And that's why New South Wales is thinking about this and putting in place concrete actions to make sure that we are preparing for the future. The very first thing I can point to is my position. I am the world's first, to my knowledge, Minister for Customer Service. Now, there's a lot of questions and criticisms at the time around the title. Why isn't it government services? Well, quite frankly, every minister is a minister for government or public service. Why isn't it citizen service? Well, because quite frankly, citizenship belongs to the federal government, not the state. And if you're a tourist coming into New South Wales, or you're a visa holder, you're not going to be a citizen, but you're entitled to be treated first, i.e. put people first rather than government and their burgeoning bureaucracies. So that's why we landed on customer service. It's about putting people first. And that is a really important, not just message, but it helps change the culture of the way we deliver services to the people of our state. Services that are increasingly digital. And we've seen that through Service New South Wales. Initially, it was set up to simply replace the RTA, or the Road Traffic Authority, or the Road and Maritime Services, as it was then called. And increasingly, we're moving from paper to digital channels. We'll always have a human presence, and that's why we've got the service centres, 110 of them, scattered throughout the state. But the reality is, people are going to be increasingly using digital channels. But we've created Service New South Wales to make sure that we are constantly focused on serving the people. Because if we don't do that, then quite frankly, we don't deserve to be in government. The other thing I want to reassure you of is that we're putting things in place, such as structures in place that I call trust structures, that helps us to move forward in that digital journey. For example, we are the first state to establish the AI and Ethics Committee. It's an advisory committee chaired by Dr. Opperman and a lot of other senior people that give advice to government on our AI settings. Most people probably don't see the importance of it now, thinking that AI really belongs in science fiction movies, but it is increasingly more pervasive in decision-making, particularly as we're relying on more and more data through digital means. Another thing that we've set up is the ID Council, and that is so important. We need to really have an honest discussion around digital identity and credentials. Now, I'm old enough to remember the 1984, 85, 86, I forget the year now, Australia card debate. And back then, it wasn't just another century ago, it was another universe ago compared to where we are now. And if anybody wants to think about the pace of change, think about what happened 15 years ago. Facebook started to become popular on the world stage 15 years ago. Now it's got 2.8 billion people using Facebook every month. That's almost 40% of the world population. And just recently, Facebook has now changed their name, but more than their name, their direction. It's not going to be Facebook anymore, it's Meta, because they are creating the metaverse. And people, if they don't think that is going to happen in the next decade or next 20 years, then they are not being serious about the future. That is what the future is going to be. It is going to be an augmented mixed reality world where digital is truly intertwined in our lives. So that is why, more than ever before, we need to build our trust structures as we move forward in a very delicate democracy. Now, trust for me is built on privacy, security, transparency, ethics, and inclusion. If we have those in place and we put people at the center of our design thinking, then we can navigate the decades ahead and reap the benefits of digital rather than be subject to the perils of it. So I thank you for bringing this conference together and discussing really important topics that unfortunately not many politicians are talking about right now, but they should be talking about right now to prepare for tomorrow and the years ahead. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Minister. Would you mind taking one question?
Of course.
Given all the things that New South Wales is currently doing, what are the most important things for us to keep in mind as more and more digital programs roll out?
What's the most important thing we have to keep in mind?
Yes.
Oh, well, again, it's always based on trust. We put people on the moon 50 odd years ago, so we can pretty much do anything digitally in terms of service delivery, but it's got to be based on trust. And that's why the best way to garner trust is to report back, to receive feedback, to ensure that if you do things wrong or make errors, you identify them, you own them, and you improve. Because no government is perfect. So I just think trust is the most important thing that I say to my team and to the government in rolling out digital services, because people say, well, what's the difference between government service delivery and corporate service delivery? There should be trust in that as well. The big difference is government has to be at a much, much higher standard, because unlike corporations, governments can put people in jail. So we have an extraordinarily high obligation to get the trust settings right around privacy, security, transparency, ethics, and inclusion. Because if we don't, then we will be subject to the perils of data and digital, and it will put pressures on the most precious things that we have, including our democracy.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your words.